Am I live? Can people hear me? Okay, that's the first hurdle overcome. The microphone's working. I was just explaining to Alex, my colleague, that I still get very nervous doing this, and I always think what could possibly go wrong, including falling off the stage and all those kind of things. But the microphone's one of those things, but it's working. I've been told I've got, what, an hour you said I had? 2 hours. So I've got 2 hours, and then these guys are going to take over and do some use cases and some demos. But I wanted to set the scene a little bit. I usually ask a question about pineapple on pizza, but somebody in the audience is going to raise their hand if I do that, so I'm not going to do that. Put your hand up if you've heard me speak before. I want to apologize for that. Okay, so I am a CTO of security for HPE. I look after the wider portfolio. Before standing up on stage, I was a customer. I spent most of my life sitting down there before I joined the dark side. I just want to set the scene a little bit around security and about zero trust, and I'm going to hand over to smarter people than me who are going to talk through some use cases. No doubt you've all seen this before. I'm not going to cover it in detail. If there's anything I say in here, take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, as it says on the slide. So I guess you're all in this room today because our landscape's changed, right? I've been in the industry 25 plus years. And things are very different than they were when I started. I remember a time when my file server was that desktop machine under the finance person's desk. We've now evolved. We've had a pandemic. Everything's going into the cloud. And many companies have always had a cloud-first approach, but it was a lie. They never meant it. Now people are actually doing it. So our data, our users, files, and applications are everywhere. But we're still protecting our environments in a legacy way. And I say that, and I'm not going to get anyone to raise their hands on that slide, because you wouldn't be here if you thought your environment was 100% secure. And really, this kind of legacy approach to protecting our environments is causing all kinds of problems, specifically around ransomware and attacks. So I'm not going to read this slide, but we all know that ransomware is on the rise. We are trying to do things differently, but we're still getting attacked. I've been working with a large car manufacturer in the UK recently. I won't mention its name. I'm sure you all know who it is. Ransomware attack. People are in an environment a long time before they actually attack you. And it takes a long time to recover. This particular car manufacturer was not able to work for many, many weeks. It was costing them £50 million a week in lost revenues. And that didn't include the supply chain. So we all know that these ransomware and these attacks are on the rise. I think what scares me even more is this concept of ransomware as a service. So we all know of software as a service, but now there are organizations such as Akira, where you can basically go on a website and pay to have a company attacked on your behalf. Okay, I'm not going to talk through the kill chain here or the attack, but these are large conglomerates, large organizations that you can pay to attack other organizations. In some cases, you don't actually have to pay them unless they compromise the organization. So you go online, you subscribe, you say, please get some data from this organization. If they don't manage to get the data, you don't pay. If they get the data, they then auction it to you. And that's pretty scary in itself. So this is nation states, this is large organizations. They have actually support centers that you can call. So not only can you get help to attack people, but if you've been attacked, you can call up and pay a ransom as well. So they're running like businesses. Akira's making millions of dollars per year out of this, and there are many of them. And this is really scary. I think what's really something that I talk about all the time is this idea of zero trust. This is a very different way of thinking. It's something that's a lot more strategic rather than product-based. I think this is something that is being driven not only because we are seeing attacks rise and we have to do things differently, but really from a lot of governance. And not all of these will apply to everyone in this room, whether it's NIS2, whether it's GDPR, whether it's DORA, any of those all now contain some element of zero trust. It was mandated in the US. We've seen it flowing down, and really this is a completely different way of looking at and protecting our environments. As I've mentioned, it's a strategy. Some misconceptions around Zero Trust is it's a product. And I know I'm stood up here as a vendor talking about product, but it's not a single product. If anybody tells you that you can just go and buy Zero Trust off the shelf and they'll fix all your problems, please don't believe them. But it is very much there and enhanced by products. So there are features from products that can help you go on this Zero Trust journey. And it really is all about least privilege. It's about always verifying access. It's about making sure fundamentally that your users can only access the things they need to do on a daily basis. I think what we've always done in the past, and I've done these sins of the past, is everyone's been able to access everything because it's just been easy. It's made our jobs easier. Therefore, if a file server got created on the network, everyone can access it. And now we need to change that way of thinking. And really, the simple way for me of looking at Zero Trust is people only access the things they need. So it's very limited, very granular. So whether you want to start your journey with some form of SSE, what part of the architecture, whether it's ZTNA, whether it's Secure Web Gateway, we see a lot of people are replacing their VPN today. It's a big attack surface. It's a big vector. It's a big concern. So whether you're starting with SSE, whether you're starting with a SASE, whether you're starting with SD-WAN or SASE as a whole, or whether you're starting with something called Universal ZTNA, we've got that covered for you. And we also have a lot of other things in our portfolio. So we can really cover all the way from on the LAN and the WAN all the way up to the edge, okay? So we're one of the only vendors in the space that has this wide portfolio. I acknowledge that we've just made a massive acquisition recently, and some of that is not covered on this slide. But if you can imagine all the things that have been talked about so far today and what will be talked about tomorrow, and rolling them all into this slide, you can truly see that we can cover you all the way from the edge all the way to the cloud. Okay, so it's really all about going on this Zero Trust journey. And that's really it from me. I just wanted to set the scene a little bit. I'm going to hand over to Alex and to Sam, and they can really deep dive into some SSE use cases. I don't know if I'm giving it to you or Sam.
Our mic's live. Good. Sorry about the typo there as well. Your J slides. So.
Zero Trust, right? Yeah, so thanks for the intro. We're now going to get a little bit more into the product, a little bit more into, we're going to try and make it practical and take you through the journey that we see many of our customers take and how they are adopting, how they are implementing ZTNA to the, they are implementing ZTNA, or how they are putting some Zero Trust practice into the remote access and into the access to public applications and so on. Okay, so first of all, we're, like Jay was showing a lot of products, a lot of things. In this session, we're going to fundamentally be talking about our SSE product, our SSE platform. This is a platform that is like fully featured SSE with a ZTNA functionality, Secure Web Gateway, CASB, with experience monitoring, host of other things. It's distributed worldwide. There's POPs in pretty much every main theater, multiple POPs in every main theater. You will manage it from the cloud. You'll monitor it from the cloud. You'll see everything from the cloud, but your traffic is going to be enforced in these points of presence that sometimes are going to be standing in the cloud. Sometimes you're going to have them on site. Okay. So now let's talk how we are going to operate this platform. You'll see when Alex shows the demo that it is pretty easy. We're trying to make it as simple as possible, because when it gets too complex, it's easier that things kind of slip through cracks. So in this one platform, you are going to be able to do all these functionalities, and you're going to be able to do all these functionalities with a single policy, right? You're going to see in your policy that we're going to do geofencing, like preventing access from, I don't know, countries where you don't have any business. We're going to apply policies to how you access your users do internet access, how you access your private applications, how you access SaaS applications. We're going to be doing some security posture to learn the context around the user. I don't think this pointer is of much use. We're going to be able to apply these policies to all types of device, and we're going to try and make it as simple as possible. It's not just one policy, it's a simple policy, and we're going to use, you'll see when Alex presents that concept of the tags. You see there, it says HR apps. That is super valuable because when we build these policies, we need to make them easily understandable. We need to be able to read the policy and see what it is trying to do. So HR apps, we'll see what it means, is essentially a label that I'm going to put on each and one of my applications. Otherwise, my policy would have thousands of lines. I want to be very precise about what I'm allowing, but I don't want to have 1,000 lines in my policy. Okay? Let's start with protecting private applications, also known as ZTNA. I personally don't like the name ZTNA. I don't think it is Zero Trust Network Access. It actually is Zero Trust Application Access, right? But we're going to protect private applications. We can do it for, we have 2 ways of doing it, and these 2 ways are because we're addressing different use cases. There's Agentless, typically a good start for third parties and so on. We have also agent-based, which is more robust in terms of the number of applications we can support. It's also more robust in terms of the performance, the controls we can do on the user. Okay? So let's start with Agentless, because this is it seems to be everyone's first challenge. I want to secure third parties, contractors, BYOD coming into the network. I don't want to be putting agents on someone's personal laptop or on some third party computer, but I still need to give them access securely to certain applications, right? So.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. So I'm just going to go back to my main dashboard. And what you'll see is what we call the Agentless portal. So this is where you can see all the applications I've given access to my user. So you can see my user in the top right, and you can see quite a large number of applications. Now, I've still got my agent running, so I'm just going to pause that to go into what we call Agentless mode. What you might have seen briefly is the number of applications I have access to has greatly diminished because I've got a policy that says if I'm running the agent, I'm doing posture checks, I'm a corporate device, I have access to more applications than what I do as maybe a contractor or using my own device. Now, we support 7 different protocols without the agent on the machine. So if I want to give access to a service, I can just provision it through the management platform, and then the user logs onto this portal with their traditional credentials, their existing IDP, and then I can access one of these services. So I've got a multitude of different protocols and different applications I've given access to, one of which is an SSH-based application. And what you notice is, without the agent, I can either access it in the browser or with native client. So I can go into my desktop option, I can copy this string or token, just delete what was in there. I can paste this string into my client. And what you see, once I've given access to this application is it doesn't actually ask for the username and password. I can predefine the credentials within the user or the app, I should say, so that that third party doesn't get access or doesn't get the credentials for the server, but I've got a policy that says they have access to it. So if I actually run some commands, we log all the commands so I can get full visibility into everything that that user is doing. Now, if I then want to revoke access to that application, I can use the tagging within the policy to be able to control that access. So if I go to my management console, I can go into my applications without changing the policy, find the application that I got access to, which is this one at the very bottom. I use this third-party tag app. So I've got a policy that if you're using third-party, you don't have access, you have access to it agentless. If I just remove those 2 tags, click OK, apply that policy, go back to the terminal, and then look, that connection's already dropped. So we can give access and revoke access very easily. Now that's an SSH use case. I'll just talk about a couple of other ones before I hand back to Sam. We could do full Windows jump host or server. So I can click on this jump host. I can either access it using my web browser or native client access to RDP. So for example, I'll just use it in the web this time. Again, it's another app just to save me time of putting in the username and password. I predefine the credentials and I have access to this RDP. Super simple from an access perspective for that third-party contractor user. And then if it's a web app, for last but not least, I've got a ClearPass server here. I can click on this one. It takes me to a specific URL, and I'll just log in my credentials because this one I've got a second authentication. And now I've got access to this ClearPass server. I've got a specific FQDN for this, or subdomain for this application. So you can give the third party this string. They can go directly to the ClearPass server after they've authenticated. It makes it super simple and easy to access. And again, every page that they go to, we record that, so we've got full visibility into what they're accessing. Yeah. Okay.
So how is this actually working? Can you go back to the slides?
Yep.
And bring me back to the previous slide for a second. So see that there's a little green icon next to that cloud or next to that data center icon. All we need to do to make this possible is put a connector. A connector is a VM, but it's just going to build an outbound tunnel. And it's going to take that application that is sitting in my private cloud or is sitting in my data center, put it outside and give it a public domain, right? If you noticed when he was accessing ClearPass, and there was like, and even with the SSH you could see it, the FQDN that was up there in the URL bar did not say like 172.16 something something or clearpass.alex whatever. It was something.accessapps.io. Of course, when you deploy this in like a production environment, you're going to give it your own domain. But in Alex's case, it's just using our internal domains. Essentially what you're doing is taking your applications from the data center or exposing what you want from your applications from the data center, putting them publicly. So as long as you're validated with your SSO credentials, you can see it. No need for an agent, no need for anything else, right? That easy. Available, as he said, for several types of applications, web, RDP, VNC, SSH, Microsoft SQL, there's several, okay? Now what happens if I need more than that? If I'm like a corporate user and I need all sorts of random apps, like some like ancient AS400 or some inventory, whatever, I want to do a DNS request, I want to replace my VPN client, right? Here we would install the app. And the app is actually very clever. It's doing the first level of enforcement. It's going to decide for essentially every rule, every match in the condition, it's going to decide how it's going to treat your traffic. We're going to see that in a few more detail as he goes through it.
Yeah. So as you saw briefly when I went to the portal earlier, I just turned on and off my agent. So in an SSE world, if you're just giving ZTNA access, you don't mind people being able to pause the agent because they're just not going to be able to access the private apps. Mm-hmm. But if you want to enforce SWG, CASB, things like that, you'll have a configuration that's what we call always on. So it reduces the level of access the user has to be turning off the agent. So now I've connected. You saw the number of apps being extended. But the user at this point, they don't have to use this user portal. It's more for agentless use cases. Now they would just use their machine as normal. So if they wanted to access a Windows app for some reason, and I could have this one specifically, domain controller in my lab, I can just use my Windows app, I can connect to it, and I've got access to my server in my lab. So it makes it just seamless from a user perspective. And I can do this either mapping in the policy saying, this user has access to this individual application, or I can say this user has access to this whole subnet. Because a lot of customers don't really understand every single app a user needs access to. So you might need to give them a wider range of access to start with, and then start to kind of limit it based on from that side of things. So if I just disconnect from here, and go back to my desktop. So I could actually just go to that ClearPass server that I went to earlier with agentlessly and go, and now get certificate error. And now I can go to the ClearPass server as I normally would because my user has access to that service. But what's different about this architecture is I haven't got an IP address on the network like you traditionally would. So my agent doesn't have a 192 or 168. It has a 100.65, a pseudo IP address that we use to mask and hide those applications from the user. So if I actually try and ping a service, say for example my domain controller, look, it's not giving me the real IP address. That 100.65 is just an IP address we're allocating to hide that service. So we're able to mask those services behind our platform. And obviously in true zero trust, you shouldn't be probably even allowing them to ping. Because actually some customers in here recently, we were having a conversation earlier this year, and they had some users or dev guys that were like, I can't ping this server anymore. They start jump host. And I was like, why do you need to ping it? Oh, because I just need to check that it's running. Why didn't you just RDP to it? Because we allow RDP, just make sure the full service is running. So there's often an education perspective that we have to give to customers that when you're moving from a traditional VPN architecture to a zero trust architecture, you should only be accessing the service in the way it's meant to be, not full network access where they have access to everything, they can ping things, they can move laterally. It's about reducing that level of access based on zero trust principles from that side of things. And we're going to go into more detail about the architecture because of the way that the agent from here in Barcelona doesn't just connect to one POP, it's connected to multiple POPs at the same time. So we're going to go into more detail about that architecture, and I won't show you that in deeper level, but if you're interested in seeing a more kind of deeper level of how the architecture works, we can do that at the booth later on. Cool. Do you want to go back to slides?
You want to show, because there's a question that this is very interesting, right? If when you do implement ZTNA, you sometimes, or you often are coming from VPN, and you often are coming from like just everything is open by default. Sometimes you can't just flip the switch. You have to do it gradually. Is there a way we can do it gradually that you can?
Yeah, so when you're creating the applications, you get options around either agentless applications, so hopefully you can see that okay, but you'll see certain applications that we support without the agent, where we say agentless supported, but you can give that traditional level of access where I can say this whole network range, you know, this whole CIDR range, I can give access to that whole service, and I can also allow all ports and all protocols and ping. And we can even support use cases around what we call server-initiated flows. So if you've got VoIP services, remember I haven't got an IP address on the network, we can support server-initiated flows through the solution through allocating an IP address for that specific use case if needed. But to give example, I can say this network range, if I created an application and I've got other applications built into it already, where I've got either individual applications or I've got wider services. So if I just clear that, okay. So you'll see I've got some larger ranges here, like this one. This is giving access to my whole London CIC network on /24s. I'm using tags, and then I'm just creating a policy that says maybe a certain set of users might need more privileged level of access to give whole network range access, where other users need more limited. So the policy is built very easy so that I can use the IDP that's integrated to choose my specific user. This is my entry user. I could specify context from what country if I wanted to. I can do things like device posture. So every minute we check the device posture on the device. So I could say that my machine has to be a Windows 11. I'm using a Mac, so that's a bit silly. I have to have disk encryption. I have to have the firewall turned on, or maybe domain join. So every minute we're checking this, as well as when the user connects. So if the posture changes on that device at any point, then we can lose and revoke access to that service, like you saw earlier. And then we see specified time range. And then if I want to give access to that network range, I can just say, my user has access to this whole app network range that I showed you earlier, and we're going to allow that. And as simple as that, to just give access to a whole network range. And then as you start to want to give more granular access, you could then say, this user has access to just either one of my tags of my groups of applications or one of my individual applications that I've specified within the configuration.
Yeah, so what we were mentioning about being able to access a range or a wildcard or stuff like that, that's not necessarily the end, that's not the end state, right? Jay said, we don't sell zero trust. You can use this product in a way that is not zero trust. You just say, Alex has access to 10.10.000/8. That's not zero trust. But it can help you get to zero trust. You replace your VPN, you do a like for like, and then you start like gradually building all your zero trust policies, and eventually you will kill that or remove that last policy that was giving you free for all, so that you can gradually move from your VPN access to a true ZTNA or to true zero trust applied to your applications, instead of having to take that moment of leap of faith that you often have when you move from VPN to ZTNA. Okay. That's one reason for the agent. It allows us to do any type of app. It allows us to do server-initiated flows. It allows us to have better performance as well. One of the things we get is when we put a connector, the connector will build tunnels to multiple POPs nearby. When we have the agent is going to be running tunnels to multiple POPs nearby, and then there's a mesh that gets formed. And if I'm far from the application, I'm going to I want to try to make sure that I get the best possible route, right? So I normally live in California. If I'm reaching an application that's here in Spain, I'm going to get into the network at the optimal point, not necessarily the closest, but the optimal point, then ride over the optimal backbone. It could be AWS's backbone, it could be Oracle's backbone, it could be Google's backbone, it could be Azure's backbone, and then down into the connector down here, right? So it'll try to minimize the distance, the latency between my agent and the application, or the connector in this case. That's great when you're very far. What about when you're very close? If it's the other way around, if it's actually my agent sitting in the same building or in the same campus as the application, I don't want to go up, let's say here in Barcelona, I don't want to go to the POP that is in Zaragoza and then come back to Barcelona. It wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? So I would have a local edge sitting here in our campus here in Fira. The agent is smart enough to know that for the policy that matches on application, whatever that is sitting here, it needs to reach through the connector that I have in Fira, and it just connects directly to that connector, right? So we're always trying to optimize the path. If we're so close to the application that going through the cloud makes no sense, we're just going to go directly from the agent to the connector. Policy is being pushed from the cloud to both agent and connector, so you still get the enforcement you're looking for, but you don't need to send the traffic, you don't need to hairpin the traffic through the cloud. Okay? Make sense? What if I have the application in a branch location? What if I want to give this ZTNA type of experience in, let's say, to an application that is hosted in like a store or a branch office or something like that? Maybe I had a customer that has lots of restaurants, and the owner-operators of those restaurants want to access, for example, the thermostat that measures how the fryers are working. Great. We can spin up a connector inside our gateways. This is something that I shouldn't be saying. Okay, we announced it in Vegas, so the demo you're going to see tomorrow was already seen in Vegas. What you're going to see is that we will be spinning up SSE connectors inside our Edge Connect gateways, so that if I need to give remote access to something that is in a remote location where I cannot easily find a VM to put the connector in, I can just spin a small connector inside a gateway and give remote access or give local access to anything that is in that location right away. Make sense? Last use case, we talked about securing your access to private applications, and we are doing it in two ways: agentless, agent-based. Now we already have the agent. We're doing lots of interesting things when accessing private applications. Now that we have the agent, I also want to secure internet browsing, secure access to SaaS applications, secure that type of stuff around the user, right? So why don't you just show it, and then we explain a little bit how it works.
Yeah, no problem. So like I say, I'll go back to my browser. I'm running the agent. This is a bit where sometimes things go wrong because I'm turning the agent on and off, so I'll make sure it's playing around. So traditional, if I'm wanting to go to a gambling site, we can block service, we can give a customized block page, for example, or if we're going to maybe something like ChatGPT, we can give a completely different customized block page, and then we can allow the user to proceed based on a warning that says, don't upload kind of information that might be corporate or sensitive in nature. We can do things like DLP, or even high-level DLP, so stop them before they even get to the platform. So, for example, we could say for certain types of file sharing services, again, another warning page, but saying, look, this is the corporate service you should be using. You should be using OneDrive, not using these unsanctioned applications from that side of things. And then if there's, for example, a sanctioned application, I'm just using this internal one, that might have just gone down on me, which is not great.
No, that one's just a little bit slow.
It looks like it's broke. Oh, no, there we go. It's just a bit slow. If I want to now say that maybe this is a sanctioned application, I'm going to allow people to upload data, but I don't want to allow, for example, uploading a PDF document or some kind of PII. I can try and upload this actual data, and then it fails. It gets blocked in the service. And then if I go into the management console, which I didn't really show you earlier, was it gives me full visibility into everything that the user's doing. So I filtered based on Agentless use case earlier. If I unfilter that, I'm going to go to the last, say, 30 minutes. I can then say, oh, actually, let's look at block traffic in the last 30 minutes. In one place, I can see everything that that user is doing, whether they're going to internal applications or external applications. You can see that my session that I was doing earlier when I accessed that SSH app, you can see that that was blocked based on the policy. So I can see that we killed that session. I can also see the warning pages from when I just went to OpenAI and then Bet365. And then in a second, you'll see that I went to the SASE training. You see I had a metadata restriction. I can see which policy it hit. I can also see in one place that we're using SSL inspection as well, so I get full visibility into what kind of inspection or what kind of we're doing on that service. And then I can go over to the far right-hand side here and even see the file type and metadata around that. So I've got full visibility into everything that the user's doing, agentless, agent in one place without having to use multiple tools, because every single point of presence has the ability to enforce both ZTNA and SWIG and CASB without having to use different POPs or backcalling the traffic from that side of things. So we've got full control over the internal apps and the external apps in one place on that side.
Yeah. One interesting thing about this, before you move out of the, right now, you're seeing all the flows from Alex's computer, because in the policy we've turned on SSL decryption. If I were to show you my lab account where I have my mom's laptop, I have a equivalent policy where I'm doing SWIG on her browsing, but I don't want to do a SSL inspection. I just want to make sure she doesn't go to domains with bad reputation. If I don't turn on SSL inspection, it won't send the traffic to the cloud. It will just send the DNS request to the cloud, so I can do I can know where the client is going, but I'll let the traffic locally break out. So on a line by line in your policy, based on what I match on, whether I match on this line or that line, I'm essentially deciding whether traffic is going to the POP, traffic is going to the local edge, traffic is taking the local breakout, right? You're not necessarily sending all the traffic to the cloud. You're sending the traffic you need to send to the cloud. If you want additional inspection, if you want one file inspection for file sharing apps, you turn on SSL inspection for that, you turn on file inspection for that. That doesn't mean that your traffic going to google.com will necessarily go there, or your traffic going to netflix.com is necessarily going to go through the cloud. So you can enforce very, very tight policies without having to send all the traffic to the cloud. It's actually very smart in how it does that. Okay.
Cool. I'll go back to the slides.
Yeah, so actually, I had a slide to present that. So the agent downloads all the SSE policies, and the agent is going to know for each traffic flow if it needs to drop it locally, if it needs to go wherever it needs to go if it needs to send it to the cloud. Then the cloud goes ahead and does additional enforcement. It'll do SSL decryption. It'll do file inspection. It'll do DLP. It'll do malicious code detection, all sorts of things as per your policy. And we keep adding more capabilities to the cloud now that HP has acquired Juniper, and Juniper has long history in the security space. Expect us to get more threat detection capabilities in our SSE POPs, right? That is, so far we've explained this with the agent. You can apply all the same things we've talked about to traffic coming from your branches. I have a branch location. I have branch locations all over the place. In the branch locations, I have users and I have things. And I cannot put the agent on the things. I cannot force these SWG policies on the things because I don't have a way to put agents on them. So both with our Edge Connect SD-WAN solution and our SD-WAN solution, and soon with our SSR solution, we have orchestrated integration with the SSE so that either Central or the orchestrator will find the closest POP for every one of your gateways, will build those tunnels, and then in your PBR policies, you determine what traffic is sent to the cloud, for which user roles, for what VLANs, et cetera. Right? So essentially the same thing that the app is doing for your users, the gateway would be doing for your things. Does that make sense? So a bit of the journey, kind of we were best practice use case, et cetera. The journey we see most people take is you start with third-party risk. It seems to be like a low-hanging fruit. It's a quick victory that you can take. Third-party access, you're just going to go through this portal. Sorry? Third-party access, you're just going to go through this portal. Then you replace your VPN and gradually go tighter policies in your users accessing private applications. Then you build that shield around the users. You protect against malicious domains. You protect against you do file inspection. You do DLP. Little by little, you need to do everything at a time. And eventually you can just unify your policy, bring all your traffic from all the branches to the SSE POPs, have a consistent enforcement, have a consistent internet and SaaS policy and private application policy for everywhere. So yeah, this is pretty much it. If you want to learn more, please go ahead, visit the Airheads community. There's tons of good content there. Ask questions, interact, answer questions as well. If you liked our session, please share the feedback. And if you didn't, please say so as well. And please tell us what you didn't like and how we can improve.
I think we should use the notes section to say if you like pineapple on pizza or something. Maybe.
Thank you very much.